Well, you guys, the sun has finally come out and it is a very busy day in the neighborhood. There's my trademark birds, but there's also blowers, chainsaws, kids playing because everybody is just so glad that the sun finally came out. So today, I know you guys think I'm the queen of garden tours. So today I'm going to give you a little garden tour of my compost pile and my compost bin. Because in a small urban garden like mine, absolutely everything has to multitask. It has to be both functional and hopefully kind of pretty. So this basically, I would say it's not maybe even a legitimate compost pile, but it is where I store my material for composting. And obviously I have a lot of it. What I do is I take all of the stuff that's in the compost bin, or some of it anyway, and it eventually gets transferred over here to this compost tumbler. This is a Mantis compost tumbler. I absolutely love it. If you guys want to go back on YouTube and even on Instagram, a while ago I did a video on it. Let me show you the inside. You can see how it's starting to break down the material. So really, my built compost bin is more of storage for compost material. My husband had it made for me for, I can't remember if it was Mother's Day or my anniversary. Some people want diamonds, some people want a composter. Now, it serves its function, but if I had designed it, I would have done some different things that would have made it a little bit more functional and accessible. This would have probably been a panel on hinges on the front that could fold down so you could release the compost. However, what this design has done, and this is just wire mesh that's in the front around basically just a big rectangle, two rectangles. But what this wire mesh has done is it's given me the opportunity to be able to plant things in the front of it. So not only am I able to use the material in it, but fun stuff can grow. And I just came up with this idea last year. If you go back on my Instagram feed, and by the way, you guys, you ask me a lot of questions and I'm trying to answer as many of them as I can, but a lot of them I've already addressed back in Instagram and on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed on either one of those platforms, you want to make sure to do that because a lot of the answers are there. I'm also getting ready to start something else where hopefully I can answer so many of your questions a little bit more easily. But back to my compost pile. So I can grow things on the front. I like to do that in a couple of ways. I always have certain things that kind of just stay in my compost pile. One, I have a shovel or some kind of pick in here that I can periodically just do something as magical as this to kind of aerate it. Then I have sticks and bamboo stakes and things that I can literally just puncture through the grid so that I can tuck in different kinds of succulents. I can blow seed. Here is some black-seeded Simpson seed. Or I can tuck in some seed. I've got nasturtium growing here. I've got some growing over here. And then whenever, especially in the summertime when sedums really are at their best, I just tuck pieces of sedum in here. By, I would say in another month, this grid will be completely filled. The other thing that I do, because I am a thrifty gardener, aka cheap, I really have a hard time throwing things away, whether it's a broken pot, I just have a hard time discarding anything. So if you've got a plant, for example, this shamrock, which I had at St. Patrick's Day, but it was really looking puny. It was one of those, do I try to resurrect it? Do I discard it? Do I put it in the compost pile or whatever? And I decided that I would kind of plant it in the compost pile. So I did. I kind of cut it back and look, isn't it sweet? It is coming back here. It's even flowering on the corners. And over here, you can see one that I put in the bin last year. So now I have them flanking both sides. This was just material that in the past I may have discarded or just, you know, thrown into the compost bin directly, but it still has some value and it will be kind of pretty, I think. I also have stuff that just surprisingly just comes up. I don't even know what some of it is. In the back here, I don't know if you can see, Stuart can kind of point back there, but there is what I think is a dahlia starting to come up. And if anybody knows what this is here, it is some kind of plant. Let me know. It escapes me what it is. I can't immediately recognize it, but this is starting to grow. The other thing I've noticed is some of the violas and things that I tossed into the compost bin. They are setting new buds and they will bloom and continue to bloom until it gets kind of hot. So the other thing that I do is sometimes if I have seeds that are past their viability stage, or I think they're past their viability stage, it says that they have expired, then again, I don't want to just discard them. So what I'll do is just create some gaps in here, and then I literally just blow them into the little cracks and crevices. Now I came up with this idea when I was in the Mediterranean and I saw all of the things that were growing out of the cracks and the craggles and the stones on the cliffs of the Mediterranean Sea. And so I thought if they can do it there, then why can't they do it in my compost pile? So I've got some more lettuce that's starting down here. This black-seeded Simpson, this will be the third harvest that I'll get off of this once we're finished shooting here. I've got probably some little scallions, or that might be muscari, coming out. There are some minor bulbs that I've also put in there, and you can see all of the different kinds of succulents. What this also does is it provides a source of material for me if I want to share some of these things in my garden, or I want to share them with friends. So this Pure Joy sedum, which I absolutely just love, I can take a snip off of this. I can put it somewhere in the garden just by tucking it in. But that prevents me from having to take a cutting from the garden display itself. I can use this kind of as a nursery to make my own cuttings. So that's another reason that I really love it. Pretty soon there will no doubt be some tomatoes that come out of this, maybe some peppers. You can see here, I've got some larkspur, pretty larkspur, and even though it was kind of in the way, I basically just cut a lot of it to bring in as a bouquet. Stay right here and I'll show you. Just this morning, this was growing up in front of the compost bin, and I just decided to take it and cut it and put it in some water, and I'll bring it inside and use it for a flower bouquet. I don't want, if possible, anything to go to waste. Now, the other kind of thing that I do, because I need a place to put them, is if I find an interesting stick, really just any kind of foraged material from the garden that I think I might want to save for later, this is where it gets stuck. Like this is a great branch here that might be helpful in staking some tomatoes or some peppers or some cosmos or something in the garden. I like its pretty shape and form. It's relatively straight, so I can kind of just squirrel this away so I can use it later. And then also it's the repository, as I said, for my half-dead plants. Now you may be wondering what this half round is right here. It kind of looks like half round bamboo. Well, it is a cutting off of this Seven Suns tree that is right next to the compost pile, and I'm going to want to make a wreath form out of it. So I wanted to start assuming that shape. So I've got it in training, so it's stuck in the grid here in a semicircular way, so I can start training it in that regard. And then another thing, because I guess if yesterday was larkspur lessons, today is compost lessons. Here's something else I want to show you guys. This was gifted to me, and by the way, this is off of my very crowded driveway. Again, I don't live on a big estate. I don't have a ton of room. I have to work with what I've got. We all have to work and garden with what we've got. And so this is basically how I try to maximize my very small space. Does it sometimes get a little too congested and crowded? Yes, but I am a gardener, and we all know that gardeners have to garden. They don't just like to garden, they have to garden. So we just try to make it work. So this Seven Suns tree, which puts out absolutely brilliant, wonderful, fragrant flowers in the summertime, was gifted to me by a good gardening friend, and I didn't have any place to put it. So it is right next to the compost pile and off of my drive. Now, it has kind of an ungainly form, I think. It's not a form that I find terrifically aesthetically pleasing, but I love the flowers, and I can, to a certain extent, I can mold it and frame it and train it in the way I want it to grow. This all falls into the category of gardening wisdom that I call don't let your plants boss you. So I am going to press this tree into my service. So right now you can see that this limb is kind of obstructing the compost pile. It hangs kind of low, and it also is in the way of some other things that I'll be working on underneath it. So this lesson kind of relates to things that I have talked about before in pruning up or raising the canopy of trees. So I am going to literally raise the canopy of this tree and prune it. I've got some good sharp pruners, and hopefully Stuart can show you what I'm getting ready to do. This is about between 24 and 36 inches off of the ground. So all I'm going to do is prune that off. Now you can see that the foliage doesn't start until it gets much higher. This gives me a lot more navigable room in which to work underneath. If this were in your garden bed, it would give you a lot more light and a lot more planting space and area that you've then created underneath the tree itself. So when I say limb up, that's what I mean. Now when I also say, and by the way, right now, if you follow, oh gosh, all sorts of accounts like E.M. Henderson, or I don't know, there's so many of them. A really popular thing to do right now is just to go outside and just take branches, clippings of just green, profuse things that you've got in your garden. It can be Japanese maple, it can be anything, but that kind of singular look of a branch that looks just gorgeous in a large glass bell jar or in a basket, and you can bring that in. This could make a real statement next to a fireplace or someplace where you wanted its gorgeous silhouette. This is the same material that this wreath form is made out of, because it's already got that natural arch, and I'm just trying to capitalize on its growth pattern. So when I talk about cleaning out the canopy of a tree, and this is what I've done with my red buds to make them so sculpted, but here's another very simple example. I just take my pruners and I just clean off any twigginess or things that look messy to me inside. That again creates more light below and more room for me to work. And it also makes, this is the other thing I love about it, you guys, hopefully you can hear me, but this is what really, it gives you a tailored look and some definition to what could otherwise be a very messy, very congested space. I work in tight spaces, so that's one of the reasons I absolutely adore things that are well defined. Now, there are other things that I could do in and around here, but I've already been a little bit long-winded in my lessons from the compost pile. Hopefully this will give you guys some ideas of how you can put something together like this yourselves. You know, if let's say you live in an apartment and you don't have space, even for this, you know what you could do? You could get a plastic laundry basket that's got mesh siding, and you could do the same thing on your deck or your porch or your balcony, and you could have a little mini compost bin that you too could grow things out of. When it gets really hot, I do have to provide some supplemental water, some supplemental moisture, and I have to take the hose to it, because later in the day when the sun goes further in the west, this whole area will get very hot and bake. Right now it's primarily in shade. But a little bit later it will really bake, and in the summertime when temperatures begin to skyrocket, it will dry out very quickly, especially in stages of high wind like we're having right now. So if I want it to keep cooking and I want it to keep breaking down while it is here in a holding pattern waiting for the compost tumbler, then I want to make sure that I keep it moist without being soggy. So hopefully you guys got just a few tips and a few lessons from my compost bin today.